The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 5, Self Help. I love the episode. It was a great reveal in this one. I was not sure if we were going to get the reveal in this episode. I thought maybe they're going to keep it going a little bit longer because I've read the comics, so I knew that the actual story from the comic books was that Eugene lied, and it was the same thing. They found out in a different way, and it was actually that in the comic books they were getting closer and closer, so it was like, all right, maybe we should check the walkie talkie to see if anyone can hear us on the radio. And he was like, no, we should wait and save the batteries. And they started to argue, and they were like, just come on, all we have to do is just turn it on for like 2 seconds and try. And it dropped, and when it opened up, there were no batteries in the walkie talkie to begin with. And that's when they found out he was lying. And in this one, it was really good. It was like, it was a high tense situation, and he realized, like, they're arguing over something that's not even real. And they, with Abraham being Abraham, someone could probably end up getting hurt. And he kind of just blurted it out, like, I'm not a scientist. And I thought that was a really cool thing that they did. I was wondering if they were going to change it or if they would make it real, because I thought if they kept it, of course, the one thing that would happen is they would get to DC and they would either do like two things or maybe three things. It was like, all right, they'd get to DC and the building would be destroyed or something, and it was real, and it would just be destroyed and it wouldn't work. They would get there and the building would be fine, and then they'd get in, and then Eugene would get killed anyway, and it's like, oh crap, he was the only one who knew how to do anything, and the cure still isn't found, or kind of what would have happened if they would have made it, and then he would have been like, I'm not a scientist, and he would have tried to make something up like he was initially planning on doing. But I love the reveal in this episode. I highly doubt he died from that punch. It was crazy to see him fall face first on the ground, though. I didn't expect him to actually like hit the back of the truck, like get hit so hard he would pass out. But I thought that was a pretty good scene. Like he gets punched once, and then it's like, all right, he got punched, and then Abraham hits him again, and he's just like, boom, and he just falls down. But it didn't look too bad. Like he's bleeding from his head a little bit, but it didn't seem like he was hurt too bad. So I'm sure he'll be fine in the next episode. But it was a really good one. We got to see him with a big reveal, and we also got to see Abraham's story because this was about his group, and he is the leader of like the DC group, and I'm sure he's gonna kind of be going nuts a little if they even focus on them actually going back, because I'm sure that's what he's gonna do. Is like, there's no reason to keep going on this fake mission. It's nothing. So we might as well go back to the group, and I can't wait for them to play that out like they did in the comic books. And Eugene's just gonna be on the outskirts. He's gonna still be in the group. I assume that's it's no spoilers. I mean, they didn't just like slaughter the guy, but I'm excited to see how in the world he ends up blending in with the group from now on once everyone learns the secret, because people have done some crazy stuff, and like Carol did some stuff and everyone kind of got past that, and now they're gonna have to get past the stuff with Eugene where it's like, I don't know, it's for certain people it'll be worse because it's like, with Carol, she was trying to save everyone from this virus because everyone was just getting sick, and with Eugene it was just he was trying to save himself, and he gave everyone false hope, like, I can cure this, we go here, and everything's gonna be perfect, and then it turns out it was just a waste of time and a waste of a lot of people's lives, because who knows, of course, just all the possibilities of people not trying to just get straight to DC to help Eugene. Who knows how those people would have ended up living their lives out. So all sorts of emotions are probably going to come up in the episode when they all finally get back together. But it was really cool to get Abraham's backstory, which is, this episode flat out was really good for comic book lovers, because it was just like in the comics. They didn't show it that way. They actually didn't show it in the comic books, but he did tell the exact story. Like the people, and they didn't exactly explain it, but you could probably guess based on some of the dialogue, especially towards the end, where he was talking about just going through the herd. He mentions how you either it was like a shitstorm behind door A or a storm and shit behind door B, and then eventually you get cornered and you have to fight, and you kind of get into even worse situations. That's what happened with him in that flashback. And the actual story from the comics is that, if I remember correctly, he went out with some of the people. They were in the mall or in the grocery store. He left with a group of people, and when he came back, he found out that like the couple of guys were trying to rape his wife, and so he like killed those guys because they did that, and him going into like this insane rage mode because of what they had done actually scared his wife away, just like in this episode. And exactly what happened and what they showed in the episode is what happened in the comics. She, despite the fact that he did that because he loved her so much, that's why he kind of went crazy. It was a bit much for her, and she took their kids and left. And unfortunately, they did end up dying. And he found them, like in this episode, he found them like a couple weeks later. And, sadly, that's what he found. He found them all dead because they were killed. So, it's really cool that it sort of paralleled that story, his past with his present, especially towards the end with Rosita kind of freaking out like she was going to pull a gun on him because he was just going to destroy Eugene, and his hand was all bloody and stuff, and it was a great way to just tell that story and parallel it to his past. And he's just freaking out and there's nothing that he can do. And the ending was really cool too, where it ended where he actually met Eugene, and you just see like, I thought the scene was actually a little bit funny the way Eugene was running, because he was just like crying and freaking out, but he was going so slow, and it was like, the way I saw it was like, yeah, he was just weak, like he was running for so long, and he just ran out of energy, and at that point he was just sobbing and like trying to keep moving as much as he could. And I understood that, but it still just looked kind of funny to me because he was like, "I'll just help me, like get him, get him," and it just seemed kind of funny to me. Like he was in like this little kid sort of state, so it just seemed really funny to me. But I understood what the scene was meant to do, and even though I got that at the same time, it was still pretty silly to me. I thought it looked kind of funny, but I love the episode. Fortunately, everyone lived. I have to assume, Eugene does survive. So fortunately, everybody lived from the bus crash. No one got killed. During the bus crash, and I have to point this out, like the zombie with like the epic beard and stuff, I thought that was pretty interesting. The water hose part, or with the fire truck, that was really cool. I love that because, they're hitting them with all this pressure, and with these zombies being zombies, their bodies are so weak that just this fire hose, which does shoot a ton of pressure, that was like, even a normal human would be really injured by that. But since they're zombies and their flesh is all rotted, their arms are shooting off. And I think the very first one they did was like an actual dummy, and they were just spraying water right at the head, and the head was just coming off in pieces. I thought that looked really good, and even if it wasn't, the CG for it was really well done. It might have been CG for that one, but it was like a good mix of CG, and the CG they do is really nice in the show too, because it's sort of simple, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be like insanely amazing because it's just body parts coming off and shooting off, so it doesn't have to have all sorts of incredible detail, especially when you're just shooting water at stuff. It wouldn't be like super detailed and stuff while it's flying through the air. So it was a nice blend of CG and some of the like dummy prosthetics where they would have certain pieces shoot off and stuff. But that was a really good scene, the heads coming off, and certain parts where like the center of the body would get shot through. There's one point where like an arm completely came off. That I thought was a really cool scene. I was surprised they even got that truck to work. Like I thought like, man, they're gonna keep going, and then unfortunately that kind of broke down before they got to like this super massive herd, which was ironically like at a farm. So, I enjoyed the episode. I thought it was pretty cool. We got some interesting action there. We got to see Eugene actually fight in the beginning of this episode, which was pretty cool. And unfortunately, it's kind of that moment of him actually standing up and protecting someone is kind of taken away. Even the fire truck scene where he helped everyone survive, all that is sort of taken away by the fact that he lied to everyone and he got a lot of people killed. In a sense, he got a lot of people killed because they were focusing on that mission, when if they weren't, they wouldn't have been moving through all these open areas, and they wouldn't be going through these forests and all these things like that. They probably would have just been like, all right, there's a ton of us, let's stop right here, we'll gather supplies, and then protect each other, instead of going out through forests and being out in the wild where you never know what's around the corner because you don't know the area and you don't know how many zombies are really around you. So even though he had some pretty cool moments in the beginning, it's probably taken away. I know it is for the actual characters in the show. It's like, I'm glad to be alive, but at the same time, zero reason to be in those situations, because we would have just stayed at the church with the rest of the group, which is fairly safe. They don't know exactly what's going on, but it was pretty interesting, and I enjoyed the episode. I just started watching another person's review before I did this one, and it was funny how they quickly mentioned this stuff about, like Beth's been missing for I don't know how long, and her sister like, and some other people think this too. Like her sister hasn't really had a moment where she's given a crap about her sister disappearing, and that's true. In this episode, even I noticed that, and it was kind of funny, and it was just like in the beginning, you know, she mentioned how she was worried about everyone else, and it was just like, what about your sister? Like there was no mention of Beth, and it is weird. It is weird that she hasn't even said her name. Like it wasn't like she had a little moment where she kind of mentioned it and then sort of forced herself to move past it. Because if that happened, then I think people would understand a little bit more. Like, okay, she mentioned it, and whoever she may have been talking to, she kind of was like, just stop. I'm fine. And you could tell she wasn't, but she's forcing herself to get past it. That would be one thing, but she literally has not said her name since she disappeared. I don't think we've heard her say anything. Like there could have been a really good scene, I think, in probably the season premiere where she's actually talking to Daryl because he was the last one with her. They could have easily had a really great scene where the two of them are talking, or maybe in the second scene or second episode this season, where she's talking to him and he's like, I'm gonna go find her. I'm gonna, he gives her all the information, and I'm sure they're gonna do it when they eventually get to it. Like, oh yeah, she knew the whole time, but as far as her actually not saying it in any of the episodes, it does kind of constantly get people's attention because it's like it's her sister missing, and she just left these other people and she's instantly talking about them and staying up at night thinking about them, and they haven't even remotely had her mention her sister. No one's Whenever someone mentions Beth, it's never around her. Like they talk about Beth, they had it with Daryl, um, and Rick when they first ran into each other. They did it during the season premiere where they kind of recapped some of the stories they were telling each other. And whenever they talk about Beth, it's never, she's never around. It's always fairly interesting how they do that. But aside from that little thing, which didn't really bother me, it was just something that stood out again in this episode, and I'm sure it annoys other people way more than it annoys me. So, sorry if it does, but even I'm starting to get to notice it a little bit more when it's like you just left these people, 12 hours ago, we'll say, and you're already staying up late at night thinking about them. And granted, they could have had that moment in between seasons, but I do feel like they need to kind of talk about it because she hasn't mentioned it, and it just seems like she doesn't give a crap when they do it that way. But overall, it doesn't, that doesn't bother me. Like I said, it doesn't bother me too much. I don't really care about that compared to like the overall story. So if you guys are bothered way more by it, of course you can put that down in the comments below. But for me, it's just it stands out. But there's so much good to overshadow that, which admittedly I think is a fairly small portion of the overall story. It is really small, but it's gonna happen eventually. Like maybe when Beth does come back, it'll just be like, yeah, I kind of had to give up on even thinking about you because it would have just destroyed me or something. Maybe that's how they'll play it. But either way, this episode was definitely great. I mean, the main focus of it was really good. We got the great reveal at the end. It was a pretty cool ending. I actually thought that was really interesting. How it's just like it ends with the lie that actually began in the past. Like it ends with the lie that is ended in this episode. So it was a really good episode. It was a nice parallel for Abraham and his story. Hopefully we get to learn more about the other characters, mostly Rosita, because we haven't really learned a lot about her. And I feel like with the reveal, especially in this episode, we got to instantly learn a ton of stuff about Eugene and how he does carry the deaths that have happened. Like he names every single person that's died, so he doesn't exactly just be like, I don't give a crap, it was all about me. He does carry those deaths in his head, and he carries that on his shoulders, which admittedly he should. So I enjoyed that he wasn't just a complete douche about it, but he's not exactly the best person right now, and we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. But comment below and let me know what you guys thought about this one, your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I think pretty much everyone knew that it was suspicious, but I have to ask anyway, did you expect this to happen? think Eugene was lying the entire time, or did you actually believe him? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.